In today's lesson, we want to provide an overview of instructional design principles and a theory from an American educational psychologist named Robert Gagne, who gained a lot of insight in the 1940s and 50s by helping pilots learn how to quickly and accurately fly planes for the United States Air Force. But before we do that, let's talk about teachers in general. No doubt, a teacher has a lot of roles. A teacher is a listener, a helper, a coach, a psychologist, and an evaluator. All of these are essential roles at varying times and in varying degrees. Lots of these roles are rather obvious and visible. You are walking around a class, you are sharing and listening, you are giving feedback, you are using teacher talk and having a great time with your students. However, one of the most significant roles that a teacher can have is when they aren't with students at all. The role of lesson designer, lesson planner, is a role that is often done in the quiet of your office. For me, it often requires a degree of solitude so I can think clearly about my learners, my objectives, and how to bridge the gap between the material I want to present and how to most clearly convey that material so that learners will acquire it. Other times, I need to surround myself with teachers so I can get ideas about how to present material, especially challenging material. So, sometimes I'm alone. Sometimes I'm with other people. But in either case, how does someone design these lessons? And what are the elements of a good lesson design? Let's go back to our discussion of Robert Gagne and discuss his basic theory of instructional design. This theory was influenced by both behaviorists and cognitive scientists, perhaps especially information processing theorists. With what you know about behaviorism and cognitive science from our second course, you can probably guess that Gagne created a rather systematic approach to instruction, and he noted 9 different learning events within his system. While it might be tempting to think of these 9 events as hard, concrete rules, please remember that when you are dealing with human behavior, there is no such thing as a hard, fast rule, something that applies at all times to all people. In a real learning environment, you might skip one of these 9 events entirely, put them in a different order, or even repeat an event multiple times in a single lesson. But what is great about Gagne's design is that it considers the fact that learners don't just receive information passively. Students are not empty vessels that you fill, but rather there are ways to stimulate a learner and make the learning process easier. In our first course, we called all of this making meaning clear. You remember? And now, in this course, we will be able to more specifically discuss how we take these difficult concepts, break them down, and allow a learner to digest the information in bite-sized, enjoyable chunks. Language is cake, right? All right, so back to Gagne. Since 9 events is a bit much for our needs right now, let's discuss the first 3 events. Events which are often associated with the lesson's introduction. First, when presenting material, Gagne said that teachers must gain the attention and interest of the audience, inform students of the objectives, and stimulate recall of prior learning. Let's look at these 3 steps a little more closely, and let me ask you a few questions to get you thinking. Gaining attention. Well, that makes sense. When you start a class, you have to grab the student's attention somehow, right? It wouldn't make sense to just start a lesson without somehow bringing everyone in the class to attention. But what does it mean to gain attention? Does it mean to simply get students to stop talking? And our second step, inform students of the objectives. What do you think about that? Certainly, students who are given clear objectives and who understand those objectives are better language learners. But how do you give learners objectives? Is it enough just to share them? Do you have to give objectives at the beginning? Or might it be appropriate sometimes to have students discover objectives inductively? And ultimately, how do you help students connect your objectives to their objectives? We'll definitely talk about that. Finally, Stimulating recall of prior learning. What does that mean? I suppose you could interpret it to mean that you help learners think about or recall past lessons, information that they have from past experiences. Obviously, it is important to know what students know before you teach them what you think is new information. I hate teaching concepts that have already been given, and students hate even more when they receive information they already know. So, definitely make sure you know what students know. You know? All right, 2 more things. First, it's wonderful to get students right from the beginning to share what they know and engage them in the learning process. Don't you hate when a teacher immediately turns students off by just talking without drawing you in? And second, stimulating background knowledge can assist you in choosing helpers. Helpers are, as you can probably guess from the word, the students who already know the material and can help others on a particular subject. So, all in all, stimulating recall seems like a great tool. But let me ask you some questions again. Do you stimulate recall in every single lesson? Is it something you do just at the beginning of a lesson? And do you stimulate recall by just asking questions? Or are there different techniques for stimulating background information? Okay, lots of information, lots of questions. These 3 steps are crucial to any lesson, but we are left with a lot of questions on how to actually get it done. And we will be spending a lot of time in our future modules answering these important questions. But perhaps we can begin by having you answer some of these questions on your own by observing actual teachers in practice. To help you begin thinking about these 3 events, in the next video, we will turn our attention to a few different teachers so you can see precisely how they put these 3 principles in practice. We'll see you then.